Hey, how are you? Kumusta po kayo? And thanks for tuning in to another edition of Paul Presents Art. My name is Paul and I'll be your guide today. And today we're just outside the Monte Clark Gallery here in Vancouver, which is of course built on the ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations to have a look at the recent paintings by Winnipeg-based artist Holger Kalberg. So we're gonna go inside, we're gonna go and have a look at the show, gonna go and have a look at each and every one of the paintings, and I hope you can join me. So let's begin the tour. I just came down those stairs, and we're turning around to have a cursory look at the show. I'll do a pan of the exhibition, then, as is customary in my videos, we'll view as many of the work in the show, and I'll provide you with some commentary as we go through. If you're new to the channel, I just want to say that this channel is about art, exhibitions in contemporary, historical, and outsider art, group shows, art collections, etc., shown in the Greater Vancouver area here in Canada. I'll also cover exhibitions in other cities that I visit. Now I'd like to share a short bio on the artist, and then we'll go from there. Holger Kalberg was born in Germany and currently lives and works in Winnipeg, Manitoba. His current body of work is shaped by an engagement with uncertainty and the act of storytelling. These paintings navigate the liminal space between construction and deconstruction, where imagery is not fixed, but emerges through a process of continual revision. I've been aware of Kalberg's work for some time now, way back in early 2000s when he was studying, living, and working in Vancouver. Those works back then, if I recall correctly, were influenced by architecture and the urban environment. Depictions of the city and the urban landscape were topics that concerned him. These current works, which are mostly portraits, landscapes, and still life, offer a hint at his pictorial trajectory these past 20 years or so. But regardless of the topic or genre, there is an underlying fundamental sensibility that has remained throughout his practice, and we'll get to that in a bit. Most of the work in the show are from 2024 to 2025 and oil on canvas. I think he also uses oil stick or oil crayon. Not sure, but I'll point it out as we go through the exhibition and see what you think. As we go through the exhibition, please share your comments or questions below if you have some. The first work we're seeing is titled Portrait with Mask, 2025 oil on canvas, 25 by 28 inches. I mentioned earlier that Kalberg's work stems from an engagement of uncertainty and aspects of storytelling, so I think it would be good to start there. An engagement of uncertainty is a liminal space, which can be thought of as a boundary, a threshold, or a transitional place. I recently read an insightful interview with the artist, published back in 2020, I think, in Border Crossings magazine, an art magazine published here in Canada. I'm going to try and remember some of what I read, but it's interesting to note that the artist doesn't start from a point of painting a portrait or a landscape, but rather Kalberg simply starts painting and allows the picture to form. That was my interpretation of it. And I think that's a really good place to start a picture. In the case of this work, it materialized into the shape of a portrait that masks a story. Now we're looking at Boat with Two Passengers, 2024. Oil on canvas, 45 by 59 inches. I think it's worthwhile to note that storytelling is often dynamic. There's always something to look forward to, something to learn, and something to discover. I get that in Kalberg's paintings, that something is about to happen, or will be said, or perhaps revealed. This painting with a boat conjures up images of migration, or a short voyage, perhaps a trading expedition. The depiction of the boat is frontal, which is not the typical depiction for a boat or a ship, and there's a reason for that. The picture is meant to highlight the two passengers and the contents of the boat, which, from my point of view, isn't clearly discernible. Are they crates or containers? Maybe goods to sell in the market. And therein lies that liminal space again, of uncertainty, which opens up the possibilities of multiple narratives. Within art, the narrative is often completed by the viewer, and the viewer contributes their experiences and personal histories to that narrative. So a democracy of interpretation is possible, which relies on our histories, opinions, and beliefs. One thing that I find unmistakable in Kalberg's paintings is his reference to modernism, and I'll get to that shortly. Meanwhile, this piece is titled Figure in Landscape, 2024, oil on canvas, 28 by 30 inches. I tend to think of modernism as that liminal artistic and social space between the two world wars, encompassing a mostly cubistic style of pictorial representation. I didn't want to say cubism per se, as that term defines something very specific, but Kalberg's embrace of modernist aesthetics is both fluid and porous, extending toward a cubistic style and surrealism, as this work with a Janus head suggests. There is also a strong utopic sensibility. I'll continue that train of thought after we look at this next work, which is titled Figure with Chairs, 2025, oil on canvas, 42 by 35 inches. I would like to expand on a couple of terms I used earlier, modernism and utopia, and expand on them as they relate to the work in the exhibition. Modernism was not just an artistic movement or time frame, it was a philosophy and a worldview. And what do I mean by that? In my opinion, modernism signified a commitment toward abstraction, experimentation, but also subjective experience. Our personal experience of art or the art object completes the experience of art. And if we can further that idea to say that our experience of art is the art itself and not the object, then we may arrive at a utopic understanding of what art is or can be. I know, it can get rather philosophical at this point, and it's just my opinion. But I feel that that was one of those boundaries it was meant to break. And speaking of breaks, here is the next piece. Table with two figures and fruit. 2024, oil on canvas, 54 by 72 inches. This exhibition is easy on the eyes, attractive. The forms are familiar, and familiarity breeds contentment. I was talking with an artist colleague who was visiting the gallery at the same time I was filming, and he told me he finds the work really satisfying. After he said that, I was thinking the same thing, but I was trying to ask myself, why are these forms satisfying? I think it's good to note that many of the themes are, in a sense, traditional themes, themes like portraiture, landscape, still life, but brought forth into the contemporary moment. For example, the colors are dark tones, reminding us of northern light, or lack thereof, and that sense of tonality with the color, the mood that it brings to the experience of the paintings, a melancholy, can perhaps be attributed to a northern hemispherical sensibility. And I'd like to expand on that, especially with the artist's history. For now, let's look at this work, titled Boat Figure, 2024, oil on canvas, 26 by 21 inches. This work is rather whimsical, with a surreal edge to it. The sails that make up the upper part of the portrait's head and the boat's hull that cuts across the jaw of the figure gives a nod to nautical themes. Like the large painting of a boat with two figures earlier, it's a theme that's appropriate for a city like Vancouver, a coastal city, with the Pacific Ocean connecting the Asian Far East with the west coast of Canada. Geography informs our experience of history, time, and place. And I think it's an apt segue to mention the significance of geography within Kalberg's painting practice. Meanwhile, this next work is another nautical-inspired piece titled Figure in Water, 2024, oil on canvas, 28 by 30 inches. Before we go into the geographic significance of Kalberg's practice, I want to briefly highlight a couple of portraits in this exhibition that portray the Janus head. In Roman mythology and legend, Janus is the god of beginnings and endings, depicted by doorways and often signifying transitions and duality, and these same descriptors are liminal in nature, being temporarily caught between moments in time. I'll continue that thought in a bit, after we look at Figure with Table and Sunflowers, 2024, oil on canvas, 42 by 44 inches. Geography can also be thought of as a liminal entity, especially those moments we are in transit from one place to another, achieving special goals in one place, then moving on to the next one. Originally from Germany, Kalberg's interest in art started young, in his teens, while living in Dinslaken, a town in North Rhine-Westphalia. His search for an art education brought him to Vancouver, Canada, and London, England, where he completed his Master's in Fine Art. Then returning to Canada and settling in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where he now lives and teaches. Growing up in Germany, I would think that certain artistic movements, such as German Expressionism, Dada, Cubism, and Surrealism, would be rather familiar. And the influence of art history doesn't end there. History can be a heavy burden to bear. Meanwhile, this work we're looking at is titled Still Life with Vase and Picture, 2024, oil on canvas, 21 by 25 inches. Going back even further, like hundreds of years, to the time of Albrecht Dürer and that entire school of the German Renaissance, I tend to ponder about how contemporary artists, especially painters, grapple with such a heavy burden of artistic legacy. You can't really escape it. It can weigh you down mentally, emotionally, and artistically. But I suppose one way is to geographically relocate yourself and allow new environments to infuse your artistic sensibilities with new perspectives. This particular work with the sunflowers, for example, one can't escape the reference to Vincent van Gogh and his suite of sunflower paintings. And the table with food and drink points to the legacy of still life painting. But of course, it's all subjective. What do you think? Am I being heavy handed with laying out these art historical references? While you ponder that, this work is Portrait Gens, 2024, oil on canvas, 22 by 18 inches. And I want to leave you with this particular thought. I think every generation interprets the contemporary moment differently. Everything, every moment, and for artists, every artistic movement has significance during the time it was happening. And the generations that follow will have the advantage and luxury of hindsight. It's not a guarantee of progress, but I think what I want to say is that in order to learn about, say, modernism, an artist has to somehow reproduce it, do it in their own way, starting with a mimicry, then evolving, and incorporating it into the contemporary moment as the artist sees fit. And I think Kalberg does that wonderfully and respectfully as it should be. Just closing in on this work titled Still Life with Vase and Can, 2024, oil on canvas, 26 by 31 inches. When I arrived at the gallery, one of the gallery staff spoke with me briefly and mentioned that there are other works in storage that didn't make it to the exhibition. Looking at the expanse of the show, I think there is a cohesion of style and temperament. The works expand into portraiture, still life, surrealism, and what ties them together is encompassing aspects of storytelling. There is one work in the show that I couldn't find a title for, but most did, and I shared those with you as best I can. And this work we're looking at is Portrait Bernadette, 2024, oil on canvas, 22 by 18 inches. And perhaps this is a good place to leave things. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Holger Kalberg's exhibition, The Kasino, at Monte Clark Gallery. I'm actually not entirely sure why the artist chose the title, The Kasino, but maybe it has something to do with risk-taking. Maybe winning, maybe losing, that liminal space. And casino with a K is a German word, with the same meaning as the English word. So the liminal space is utopic, which in the original Greek definition means no place. If you'd like to share your thoughts, observations, questions, please do so in the comments section below. I'd really appreciate that. Also, click the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribe, because it's free and helps the channel gain momentum. And as a non-monetized channel, subscribing achieves visibility for the channel and creates opportunities for the artists and the gallery. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much for joining me today. You have a great day, and I hope art continues to inform your life. Tune in again for more art-related videos. Goodbye!